The late afternoon sun, a fiery orb dipping below the suburban horizon, cast long, distorted shadows across the already cluttered garage. Dust motes danced in the last golden rays filtering through the grimy window panes, illuminating a scene that was both mundane and, unbeknownst to its participants, on the precipice of the extraordinary. Liam, a man whose hands bore the indelible marks of countless hours spent coaxing life back into reluctant engines, grunted from beneath the hood of a vintage Mustang. His 42 years had settled comfortably on him, etching lines of worry and wisdom around his eyes, a testament to his sole proprietorship of a bustling auto repair shop and, more significantly, his journey as a single father. "Dad, are you even listening to me?" A melodic voice, sharp with a hint of exasperation, cut through the metallic symphony of Liam's wrench against stubborn bolts. It was Chloe, his daughter, a whirlwind of vibrant energy barely contained within her 17 years. She stood beside him, a flashlight clutched in her hand like a scepter, its beam unwavering on the greasy labyrinth of the engine. Chloe, with her bright, inquisitive eyes and an independent streak as fiery as her auburn hair, was a constant source of both pride and amiable frustration for Liam. She was his universe, the compass by which he navigated his otherwise predictable life. Liam mumbled, his voice muffled by the engine's cavity. He knew exactly what she was talking about. It was the same well-worn argument, dusted off and presented with new fervor almost daily. Chloe was on the cusp of adulthood, brimming with the impatience of youth, while Liam, in her eyes, had become a creature of habit, content in his grease-stained overalls and the rhythmic hum of an engine. "Seriously, Dad, I'm going to college next year. You can't just hibernate until then. You need to get out there. Meet someone. Go on a date." She punctuated her words with an emphatic bob of the flashlight, causing the beam to momentarily stray and blind Liam. He pulled his head out, blinking against the sudden glare. "Chloe, darling, I assure you, my social life is perfectly adequate. Besides, who has the time for dating when there's a classic Mustang in need of saving?" He gestured grandly at the car, a defiant glint in his oil-smudged eyes. Chloe rolled her eyes, a gesture honed to perfection over years of paternal stubbornness. "That's not a social life, Dad, that's a mechanical life. And frankly, it's boring." "Boring?" Liam feigned a gasp, pressing a hand dramatically to his chest. "This engine, my dear, holds more intrigue than any online profile you could ever swipe through." Their playful banter, a familiar rhythm in their shared lives, was abruptly, violently shattered. Without warning, a blinding, incandescent white light erupted from the corner of the garage, washing over them with an intensity that seared their retinas. It was followed by a concussive boom that vibrated through the very foundations of the building, rattling tools off shelves and sending a cascade of dust motes spiraling in its wake. A strange, electric tingling sensation, like a million tiny needles pricking their skin, coursed through their bodies, building to an almost unbearable crescendo. Liam squeezed his eyes shut, his ears ringing, convinced the world was coming to an end in a spectacular burst of light and sound. When he dared to open them again, the garage was still standing, albeit shrouded in a hazy, ethereal glow that slowly began to dissipate. But nothing else was as it should be. He was no longer hunched over the engine, his back protesting the awkward angle. Instead, he stood upright beside the Mustang, the heavy-duty flashlight, still clutched firmly in his hand, felt strangely light. Across from him, a figure was slowly pulling itself out from under the hood. It was his own body, clad in his familiar grease-stained overalls, his broad shoulders and strong arms now seeming to move with an unfamiliar fluidity. "Dad?" The voice that emerged from his mouth was unmistakably Chloe's, tinged with a bewildered tremor. Liam looked down and a gasp, high-pitched and undeniably feminine, escaped his lips. His hands, once calloused and strong, were now slender, adorned with short, neatly manicured nails painted a vibrant shade of sky blue. A tank top, far too snug and revealing for his usual attire, stretched over a chest that was undeniably not his. The familiar scent of engine oil was replaced by a faint, sweet aroma of cherry blossom. "Chloe," he squeaked, immediately clamping a delicate hand over his mouth, the sound of his daughter's voice echoing eerily from his own throat. They stared at each other, two doppelgangers caught in a terrifyingly intimate cosmic joke. A moment of stunned silence, thick with disbelief, hung between them. Then, in perfect, horrified synchronicity, they both screamed. What in the blazes just happened? Liam, trapped in Chloe's body, shrieked, his voice cracking with a potent cocktail of fear and utter bewilderment. He gestured wildly at his own body, now occupied by his daughter, who was staring at her new, larger hands with an expression of comical dismay. I don't know. Chloe, in Liam's body, stammered, her voice deeper, gruffer, yet still imbued with her youthful panic. "You're me. And I'm you." Before they could delve further into this existential crisis, a cacophony of shouts and screams erupted from outside the garage. A chilling realization dawned on Liam. This wasn't just their bizarre predicament. They scrambled out of the garage and onto the driveway, where a scene of utter pandemonium unfolded. Neighbors, usually so placid and predictable, were running around in various states of confusion and distress. "My back. Why does my back not hurt anymore?" cried old Mrs. Henderson, usually hunched and frail, as she suddenly executed a surprisingly agile cartwheel on her lawn. "I'm not a cat," wailed little Timmy Jenkins, a boy known for his boundless energy, who was now trapped in the corpulent, fluffy body of Mrs. Henderson's Persian cat, scrambling frantically up a lamppost. Amidst the swirling chaos, a frantic voice rose above the din, belonging to Mr. Abernathy, the notoriously eccentric scientist who lived 3 houses down. He was a disheveled mess, his usually pristine lab coat now smeared with what looked suspiciously like marmalade. More disturbingly, he was trapped in the body of Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood's formidable matriarch, her usually stern face now contorted in an expression of panicked scientific urgency. "My quantum entanglement experiment. It's gone terribly wrong. A localized body swap field. Everyone in the vicinity has been redistributed." A hasty, impromptu neighborhood meeting was convened, held amidst the lingering scent of ozone and the bewildered cries of various swapped individuals. Mr. Abernathy, still very much Mrs. Gable, explained, with flustered hand gestures, that his experimental quantum resonator had malfunctioned, releasing a pulse that had randomly reallocated consciousnesses within a certain radius. He was already working on a reversal, but it would take time. The collective decision was swift and unanimous: secrecy. The outside world, particularly the government, could not know. The terrifying prospect of becoming human or animal or inanimate object, guinea pigs, was enough to unite even the most fractious neighbors. Until Mr. Abernathy could fix his machine, they would all pretend to be the person whose body they now occupied. And so, with a sinking heart that felt profoundly wrong in his new, smaller chest, Liam's life as his 17-year-old daughter, Chloe, began. That evening, the doorbell chimed, a cheerful sound that felt utterly incongruous with the surreal events of the day. Chloe, in Liam's body, answered it. "Oh, hi, Maya," she said, her voice a strange, deep echo of Liam's. Maya, Chloe's best friend, a girl with an infectious laugh and an uncanny ability to decipher teenage angst, stood on the porch, a confused frown creasing her brow. She glanced between the two figures in the doorway, her eyes darting from Chloe, now Liam, to Liam, now Chloe. "Mr. Davies?" she asked, her voice tentative, as if addressing a particularly well-dressed ghost. Liam, feeling a fresh wave of mortification, pulled Maya inside, Chloe following close behind. They sat her down on the living room couch, and with a series of overlapping explanations, stutters, and frantic gestures, they laid bare the impossible truth. To her credit, Maya, after an initial moment of wide-eyed disbelief, adapted with remarkable speed. Perhaps it was the sight of Mr. Henderson, the usually stoic retired accountant, attempting to teach Mrs. Henderson's cat how to play fetch. The cat, still little Timmy, was decidedly uncooperative, that convinced her. Or perhaps she was simply used to the bizarre nature of their eccentric neighborhood. So Maya said, her eyes twinkling with a mix of shock and amusement, pointing at Liam in Chloe's body. You're actually Liam? In Chloe's body? Liam nodded miserably, a blush rising on Chloe's delicate cheeks. Yes, he squeaked. And you're Chloe, in your dad's body, she confirmed with Chloe, who nodded, her new, deeper voice adding a strange gravitas to the simple gesture. Well, Maya said, flopping onto the couch, a grin spreading across her face, this is wild. But I did see Mrs. Henderson doing a cartwheel in her front yard, and Mr. Henderson trying to teach her cat to play fetch, so I guess I believe you. She paused, then added, with a mischievous glint, and I thought my life was complicated. She offered to stay the night, sensing the seismic shift that had occurred and the overwhelming need for guidance. Especially for Liam. He, more than anyone, would need a crash course in the intricate, often baffling, world of a teenage girl. A world he was now, quite literally, trapped in. That night, Liam found himself in Chloe's bedroom, a kaleidoscope of pastel colors and band posters, a stark contrast to his own Spartan, functional space. He lay rigid in Chloe's bed, the soft cotton sheets feeling alien against his bare legs. Maya slept on a trundle bed beside him, her soft, even breaths a stark reminder of his own frantic, shallow ones. He wore the baggiest sleep shirt he could find in Chloe's closet, a faded gray oversized tee adorned with a cartoon unicorn. He stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars plastered on the ceiling, his mind reeling. You can relax, you know, Maya whispered in the darkness, her voice soft. It's not like you're going to accidentally float away. Easy for you to say, Liam whispered back, his voice a reedy imitation of Chloe's. You're still, you. The realization hit him with a fresh wave of despair. He was no longer just Liam, the reliable auto mechanic, the steady father. He was Chloe, navigating a landscape of teenage complexities he had only ever observed from a distance, and now he was utterly, terrifyingly, immersed in it. Morning arrived with a cruel swiftness, pulling Liam from a fitful, dreamless sleep. Every muscle in Chloe's body ached from his rigid posture throughout the night, a stark contrast to the familiar comfort of his own well-worn mattress. Nature, an insistent and undeniable force, called with an urgency that could no longer be ignored. He shuffled towards the bathroom, his movements clumsy and unfamiliar in this smaller, more delicate frame. Locking the door with a click that sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet house, he approached the mirror. Staring back at him was Chloe's reflection, her long, auburn hair a wild, tangled mess, dark circles shadowing her usually vibrant, now weary, eyes. My eyes now, he thought with a jolt of unsettling recognition. A shower was a necessity, a desperate attempt to wash away the lingering disorientation. With a profound reluctance that settled heavy in his new chest, Liam turned on the water, the spray immediately steaming up the mirror. He began to undress, his gaze fixed resolutely on the ceiling, a desperate attempt to avoid the impending visual. But as the oversized sleep shirt slipped from his shoulders, he caught an unavoidable glimpse of himself in the mirror. The shock of seeing his daughter's naked body, illuminated by the harsh bathroom light, made him freeze. It felt wrong, profoundly invasive, a violation of an unspoken paternal boundary. Even though his rational mind screamed that this body was, for the time being, his own, a primal instinct of protection, of impropriety, surged through him. He quickly averted his eyes, shame burning a hot trail up his neck. He stepped into the shower, turning his back to the mirror, and rinsed off as fast as humanly possible, trying desperately not to touch or look at anything more than absolutely necessary. The warm water was a momentary solace, a thin veil against the disorienting reality. Afterwards, wrapping a fluffy towel tightly around himself as if it were a shield, he called out to Maya through the closed bathroom door, his voice still reedy and unfamiliar. Maya, I need clothes. I can't. I don't know what to wear. A stack of neatly folded garments appeared through the barely open door, Maya's hand a fleeting blur. Start with these. Chloe's usual go-tos. The first item was a pair of cotton underwear, surprisingly soft, adorned with tiny, cheerful strawberry prints. He pulled them on, feeling a ridiculous blush creep up his face. The next item made his stomach clench, a bra. He'd seen Chloe's bras, of course, haphazardly strewn around her room, but he'd never truly considered them. Now, faced with the intricate contraption of straps, hooks, and underwire, he felt utterly out of his depth. He fumbled with it, twisting and turning the fabric, struggling to decipher its alien architecture. After several minutes of awkward grappling, he finally managed to secure it, the restrictive feeling instantly constricting his chest. He took a shallow, gasping breath. How do women deal with this every single day? He wondered, a newfound, grudging respect blooming in his bewildered mind. Next came a blue denim skirt, its hem falling just above the knee, feeling far too breezy and exposed for his comfort. A loose, green top followed, its soft fabric doing little to alleviate the instant self-consciousness that settled over him. He emerged from the bathroom, feeling like an actor in a poorly conceived costume drama. "You look fine," Maya assured him, though her suppressed smile and the subtle twitch at the corner of her lips suggested otherwise. "But your hair, Dad, is a disaster." The next 20 minutes were an exercise in torture. Maya, armed with a brush and an array of bottles, set about taming Chloe's long, auburn hair. Liam winced as she worked through the tangles, explaining the mysteries of conditioner and dead angler spray. His scalp stung, and he gained a profound, agonizing appreciation for the time Chloe spent on her appearance each morning. The sheer effort involved in simply presenting oneself as a teenage girl was staggering. The following days were a relentless crash course in the labyrinthine world of teenage girlhood. Maya, a veritable guru of feminine mysteries, practically moved in, coaching him through Chloe's daily routine. Chloe herself, in Liam's body, called frequently, her voice now a deep rumble, offering guidance and increasingly exasperated critiques. "Don't slouch like that, Dad. You're making me look like a caveman," Chloe, as Liam, reprimanded during one of their evening check-ins. "And stop walking so heavy-footed. You're clomping around like a lumberjack." "It's hard." Liam, as Chloe, protested, trying to lighten his step, a delicate balancing act he couldn't quite master. "And please stop staring at the floor when people talk to you. I always make eye contact." "That's because you're confident, Chloe," Liam retorted, frustration mounting. "I feel like an imposter." "You are an imposter," Chloe said with a laugh, the sound eerily deep in Liam's chest. "But no one else knows that, so fake it till you make it, Dad." He practiced sitting with his knees together, a posture that felt utterly alien. He worked on speaking in Chloe's higher register, trying to inject a youthful lilt into his bewildered pronouncements. Maya patiently supervised his attempts at applying basic makeup. The foundation felt like a suffocating mask on his skin, and the mascara made him blink uncontrollably, his eyes watering with irritation. "How do you not stab yourself in the eye every morning?" he asked Chloe in genuine frustration during another call, rubbing his stinging eye. "Practice," she replied with a shrug, a gesture that looked strangely out of place on Liam's normally unexpressive face. "My shrug, not yours. You're doing it wrong." "And the hair," Liam complained, gesturing to the long brown locks that seemed to have a mind of their own, constantly falling into his eyes or tangling with every slight movement. "Welcome to my world," Chloe said without a trace of sympathy. "Now you know why I'm always asking for hair ties." The weekend passed in a blur of awkward lessons in femininity. Monday brought a new terror, a challenge even more daunting than the bra: high school. Liam, in Chloe's body, would have to attend her classes, interact with her friends, and somehow maintain her impeccable GPA. Maya, ever his loyal guide, was his lifeline, literally walking him through the chaotic corridors of Northwood High. "That's Jason. You have biology with him. Say hi, but don't stop to chat. He'll talk your ear off about his car, and Chloe always just nods politely and moves on. "That's Miss Albright, your English teacher. Chloe has an A in her class, so smile, but don't volunteer any answers. You might say something too. Dad-like." He copied Chloe's elegant handwriting as best as he could, scribbling notes with painstaking care. He stayed quiet in classes, trying to blend in, a master of inconspicuousness. But the social dynamics of high school were a bewildering, intricate dance he couldn't quite master. Girls spoke in codes and hidden meanings he couldn't decipher. Boys stared in ways that made him profoundly uncomfortable, a mixture of casual admiration and something subtly predatory. Teachers expected Chloe's usual stellar performance, her insightful questions and articulate answers. By the end of the week, Liam had developed a profound, bone-deep respect for the intricate pressures Chloe navigated daily, the academic demands, the social anxiety, the constant performance of self. Chloe made it look effortless, but experiencing it firsthand was utterly exhausting. School lunch was particularly stressful, a minefield of cliques and unspoken rules. He stuck close to Maya, copying her movements like a shadow, clinging to her presence. "Is it always this complicated?" he whispered to her after narrowly avoiding sitting at what she called the jock table, a place Chloe normally avoided. "You have no idea," Maya replied, steering him towards a group of girls he vaguely recognized from Chloe's Instagram. "Just smile and ask about the chemistry homework. It's a safe bet." The social minefield of high school was even more challenging than the academic demands. Every interaction felt loaded with potential mistakes, a wrong word or an awkward gesture threatening to shatter Chloe's carefully constructed persona. Each conversation seemed to have a subtext he couldn't quite grasp, and the constant awareness of how he looked, moved, and spoke was mentally draining in a way his familiar work at the auto shop never was. He found himself longing for the simple, honest grind of metal, the predictable mechanics of an engine. Friday night brought another, albeit lighter, challenge when Maya declared that his clothing options were severely lacking. "You've worn the same 3 outfits all week, Dad. People are going to notice. Chloe has style." And so began what Maya gleefully called the fashion show. She pulled items from Chloe's overflowing closet, creating combinations Liam would never have considered in a million years. A cream-colored cable-knit sweater paired with a burgundy corduroy skirt that fell just above the knee. A teal-green cotton blouse with ruffled cap sleeves matched with dark navy skinny jeans that felt like a second skin. And then, the ultimate horror, a sunshine yellow sundress with a delicate floral pattern and thin straps that made him feel painfully, shockingly exposed. "I can't wear that," he protested, his voice tinged with genuine panic, gesturing at the sundress with wide eyes. "Everyone will see her arms." Maya laughed, a bright, tinkling sound. "That's kind of the point, Dad. Chloe has great arms." Liam tried on outfit after outfit, modeling each one for Maya, who offered a running commentary of cute. "Definitely not, and that's a good one." Some looked utterly ridiculous, others surprisingly flattering. Despite his initial resistance, he found himself laughing along with Maya, enjoying the camaraderie, if not the clothes themselves. He was beginning to see the world through Chloe's eyes, not just literally, but figuratively, understanding the subtle nuances of presentation and self-expression. That night, Maya, sensing his exhaustion and lingering discomfort, suggested a bath to help him relax after the stressful week. "Just soak for a while," she said, running the water and adding a generous amount of lavender-scented bubbles. "It'll help with that tension headache you've been complaining about." Hesitantly, Liam agreed. Once alone, he slipped into the warm water, keeping the bubbles strategically placed, a flimsy but essential barrier against his lingering self-consciousness. The sensation was overwhelming. The water seemed to touch him differently in this body, more sensuously, more sensitively. He focused on his breathing, trying to stay still, trying not to disturb the protective layer of foam. Despite his discomfort, he had to admit the warm water did ease the persistent tension in his shoulders and neck. A strange, almost pleasant warmth spread through him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. As the second week began, Liam started to adjust, slowly, incrementally. He could now put on a bra without a 15-minute struggle, his fingers learning the intricate dance of hooks and straps. He remembered to use conditioner, his hair becoming less of a tangled nightmare. He even managed to apply mascara without poking himself in the eye, a small victory that felt monumental. More surprisingly, He began to see glimpses of Chloe's life that he had never truly noticed before, fragments of her world that had always been just beyond his understanding. How her friends looked to her for advice, for comfort, for genuine, heartfelt connection. How her teachers respected her intelligence, her thoughtful contributions. How some of the boys looked at her not just with fleeting attraction, but with genuine admiration, respect for her wit and kindness. Chloe, meanwhile, seemed to be thriving in his life. She enjoyed the straightforwardness of his job, the honest grind, the tangible satisfaction of fixing things. She reveled in the respect his coworkers showed her, the camaraderie of the garage. "Being you is easier in some ways, Dad," she told him one evening as they ate dinner, a strange sight of Chloe in Liam's body and Liam in Chloe's body sharing a meal. No drama, just engines. "And being you," Liam admitted, a sigh escaping Chloe's lips, "is harder in ways I never appreciated. The social pressure alone would break me if I had to do it long term." She smiled, a strange expression on his usually stoic face, a flash of Chloe's youthful exuberance shining through his more rugged features. "But you're doing it, Dad. And maybe when we switch back, you'll remember what it's like to live a little. You deserve to enjoy life, Dad, not just survive it." Her words stayed with him, lingering long after their conversation. Had he been merely surviving since Chloe's mother left? Had he used being a single parent as an excuse to stop living fully, to retreat into the predictable comfort of his garage? The thought was unsettling, a seed of introspection planted in the fertile ground of his new, bewildering experience. 2 weeks after the incident, news spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Mr. Abernathy's machine was repaired. That evening, at exactly 8 p.m., they would all gather in their homes for the reversal. Maya hugged Liam goodbye, a genuine warmth in her embrace. "It's been weird, but kind of fun, Billy," she said, using the nickname Liam had always hated, but now found strangely endearing in Chloe's voice. "You're a good sport." As 8 p.m. approached, Liam and Chloe sat in the living room, the air thick with anticipation and a strange, unspoken melancholy. Neither spoke, the silence punctuated only by the ticking grandfather clock. "No matter what happens," Chloe said finally, her voice deep in Liam's chest, "I love you, Dad." "I love you, too," Liam replied, his voice catching slightly in Chloe's throat. At 8 p.m. sharp, the blinding white light returned, filling the room with its incandescent glow. Liam felt the strange tingling again, a sensation of floating, of being everywhere and nowhere at once, a cosmic rearrangement of consciousness. The end. Please provide the next command to continue or modify the story. The blinding light intensified, a silent scream of pure energy that seemed to strip away the very fabric of their beings. Liam felt the familiar tingling sensation, but this time it was more profound, more encompassing. It wasn't just a physical sensation, it was as if his consciousness was being stretched, thinned, then rapidly reeled back in, like a cosmic elastic band. He felt a fleeting sense of disorientation, a momentary confusion of identity. Was he Liam, or Chloe, or something else entirely? Then, with a sudden, almost violent snap, it was over. He blinked, his eyes adjusting to the familiar, if slightly dusty, glow of his living room lamp. The white light had vanished, leaving only the mundane reality of their comfortable, if now slightly askew, furniture. He took a deep breath, and the familiar scent of engine oil and old books, his scent, filled his nostrils. He looked down at his hands. Calloused, strong, and undeniably his. He flexed his fingers, a profound sense of relief washing over him. "Dad?" The voice, light and melodic, was Chloe's. He looked up, and there she was, sitting opposite him on the couch, her auburn hair slightly disheveled, her bright eyes wide. She was back in her own body. A profound wave of emotion, a mix of joy and a strange, unexpected sadness, welled up within Liam. He lunged forward, pulling her into a tight, almost bone-crushing hug. "Chloe, are you really back?" he mumbled into her hair, tears pricking his eyes. She laughed, a genuine, unrestrained sound that brought a fresh wave of relief. "Yeah, Dad, I'm back. And believe me, I am so happy to feel these tiny hands again." She wiggled her fingers playfully. They pulled apart, examining each other as if seeing a beloved stranger. Liam ran a hand through his own, short, slightly receding hair, marveling at the coarse texture. He took another deep breath, reveling in the feeling of his own chest expanding, his own voice box vibrating with a rumble that was distinctly him. "And you," he said, a grin spreading across his face, "you're back too. No more early morning shaves for you, eh?" Chloe grimaced. "Don't remind me. And trust me, Dad, your body produces far too much hair." They laughed, a cathartic release of tension that had been building for 2 weeks. But beneath the laughter, a subtle shift was already perceptible. Liam looked at Chloe, and for the first time, he truly saw her. Not just as his daughter, but as a complex individual, a young woman navigating a challenging world. The pressures he had experienced in her body had opened his eyes, given him an empathy he hadn't possessed before. He saw the faint lines of worry around her eyes that he never noticed, the slight tension in her shoulders that spoke of unspoken burdens. I owe you an apology," Chloe, Liam said, his voice surprisingly soft. "I never truly understood what you go through every day. The school, the social stuff, it's a lot. And I guess I took you for granted, your resilience, your strength." Chloe's eyes softened. "It's okay, Dad. And I never realized how much you do for me, for us. Your job, keeping everything running, it's a lot harder than I thought. And I definitely appreciate having my own bed and my own clothes back." She shuddered dramatically. "Your overalls were surprisingly itchy." They spent the rest of the evening recounting their experiences, swapping stories of their respective body swap adventures. Chloe regaled him with tales of dealing with his notoriously difficult client, Mrs. Albright, who always demanded explanations in excruciating detail, and the challenge of lifting heavy engine parts with his body's strength. Liam, in turn, described the bewildering intricacies of a girl's locker room, the baffling world of TikTok trends, and the terrifying experience of giving a presentation in Chloe's advanced calculus class, a subject he barely understood. As the night wore on, a comfortable silence settled between them, a new understanding binding them closer than before. Liam found himself observing Chloe with a renewed sense of wonder. He noticed the way her brow furrowed when she was thinking, the subtle tilt of her head when she was listening intently. He had always loved her, but now he knew her in a way that transcended the simple father-daughter bond. The next morning, Liam woke up feeling refreshed, truly rested for the first time in weeks. He showered, appreciating the familiar feel of his own skin, the effortless ease of his routine. He even hummed a little tune as he brewed his coffee. When he arrived at the auto shop, his coworkers, Big Tony and Maria, greeted him with their usual boisterous banter. They had been swapped too, Tony finding himself in Maria's petite frame and Maria in Tony's burly body, leading to a week of comical mishaps and a surprising surge in efficiency. Maria, it turned out, was remarkably adept at heavy lifting. "Liam, good to have you back, man," Tony bellowed, clapping him on the back, a gesture that almost knocked him over when Chloe had been in his body. "Glad to be back, Tony," Liam replied, genuinely. He slipped into his overalls, the familiar weight and texture a comforting embrace. He felt a renewed sense of purpose, a deep appreciation for the simple, honest work of his hands. That evening, a subtle shift occurred. Chloe, instead of disappearing into her room after dinner, lingered in the kitchen. "Hey, Dad," she began, a hint of nervousness in her voice. "I was thinking, you know how you always say I should learn more about cars?" Liam paused, a spoonful of mashed potatoes halfway to his mouth. "Yeah. Well," she continued, pushing a stray strand of hair behind her ear, "I was thinking maybe I could actually, help out at the shop sometimes. After school, weekends. Just to learn. I mean, you taught me how to drive, so maybe, how to fix things too." Liam stared at her, a slow smile spreading across his face. This was new. This was different. Before the swap, Chloe would have scoffed at the idea, preferring her books and her friends to the greasy confines of the garage. "Are you serious?" he asked, trying to keep the excitement out of his voice. "Yeah," she nodded, a determined glint in her eyes. I mean, it's not like I want to be a mechanic, but it might be useful to know. And, she added, a hint of her usual teasing returning, maybe I can teach you a few things about not smelling like a tire factory. Liam laughed, a warm, genuine sound. It's a deal, Squirt. The next few weeks settled into a new, comfortable rhythm. Chloe did indeed start coming to the shop, at first hesitantly, then with increasing confidence. Liam found himself explaining engine diagrams, the intricacies of a carburetor, the satisfying thud of a tire being changed. He watched, proud, as she learned to use tools, her small, delicate hands surprisingly adept. And in return, Chloe offered him glimpses into her world. She taught him about new music, explained the bewildering landscape of social media, and even dragged him to a local art fair, something he would never have considered before. Their relationship deepened, evolving beyond the traditional father-daughter dynamic. They were still father and daughter, of course, but now they were also confidants, allies, two individuals who had literally walked in each other's shoes, sharing an experience that no one else could truly understand. One evening, as they were cleaning up the garage, Chloe wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek. You know, Dad, she said, leaning against the workbench, it's funny. Before all this, I thought you were just, Dad, predictable, set in your ways. Liam chuckled. And I thought you were just, Chloe, my daughter, full of teenage drama and impossible to understand. But now, she trailed off, looking around the garage, a contemplative expression on her face. Now I see you differently. And I think you see me differently too. We do, Liam agreed, a soft smile playing on his lips. We really do. He realized, with a quiet sense of awe, that the body swap, though terrifying at the time, had been a strange, cosmic gift. It had forced them to see beyond their preconceived notions, to truly appreciate the complexities and challenges of each other's lives. It had broken them out of their routines, shaken them awake. But as the weeks turned into a month, a subtle, unsettling feeling began to creep into Liam's newfound contentment. It started small, almost imperceptible. A fleeting moment when he'd catch his reflection in the mirror and for a split second, he'd expect to see Chloe's face. Or a strange pang of familiarity when he heard a certain pop song on the radio that Chloe had often played. He dismissed it as lingering psychological effects of the swap, a natural residue of such a profound experience. Then, things grew stranger. He'd be working on an engine, his hands instinctively reaching for a tool, and a voice in the back of his mind would whisper, no, that's not how Chloe would hold it. He'd find himself instinctively crossing his legs at dinner, a distinctly Chloe habit he'd adopted during the swap. He'd catch himself humming a melody he'd never heard before, a song he knew Chloe loved. He started noticing subtle changes in his own personality. He was more patient, more attuned to emotional nuances. He found himself thinking about colors, about aesthetics, in a way he never had before. He even caught himself considering buying a new, less functional shirt for the first time in years. He tried to ignore it, to shake it off. But the feelings persisted, growing stronger, more insistent. It was as if a faint echo of Chloe's consciousness had remained within him, a subtle influence that was slowly, imperceptibly, altering his own. One afternoon, he was demonstrating how to change a tire to Chloe at the shop. He had just finished tightening the lug nuts when he paused, staring at his hands. For a moment, a fleeting, terrifying moment, he felt a lightness in his wrists, a delicate strength, a precise grace that was utterly unfamiliar. It was as if, for a split second, Chloe's hands were operating his body. He shook his head, trying to dislodge the unsettling thought. Just exhaustion, he told himself. Too much work. But the unsettling sensation lingered, a persistent, chilling whisper in the back of his mind. What if the reversal hadn't been entirely complete? What if a part of Chloe, a part of her essence, had remained intertwined with his own? And if so, what did that mean for him? And, more importantly, what did it mean for Chloe? He looked at his daughter, who was beaming with pride at her newly changed tire. She seemed perfectly fine, perfectly herself. Too perfectly, perhaps? A new, even more disturbing thought began to take root. What if she was also subtly changed? What if they were both carrying a piece of each other, forever altered by the cosmic spark that had briefly merged their souls? The comfortable rhythm they had established suddenly felt fragile, threatened by this terrifying, unspoken possibility. The journey of understanding had, it seemed, just begun. The unsettling whispers in Liam's mind grew louder, no longer dismissible as mere lingering psychological effects. The changes were subtle, almost imperceptible to an outside observer, but to him, they were profound. He found himself humming Chloe's favorite pop songs without realizing it, a subconscious soundtrack to his days. He would instinctively reach for a certain brand of tea Chloe preferred, even though he had always been a staunch coffee drinker. He even started noticing subtle shifts in his vocabulary, using phrases and inflections that were distinctly Chloe's. One morning, while shaving, he caught a glimpse of himself in the mirror. He paused, razor halfway to his jaw. For a fleeting moment, he saw not just Liam, but a flicker of Chloe's expressive eyes, a hint of her playful smirk, superimposed on his own reflection. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving him with a cold knot of dread in his stomach. This wasn't just imagination, something deeper was at play. He began observing Chloe more closely, a keen, almost scientific eye replacing his usual fatherly gaze. She seemed perfectly content, vibrant, and utterly herself. She was excelling in school, her newfound interest in mechanics blossoming alongside her usual academic pursuits. Yet, Liam started to notice things. Chloe, who had always been a meticulous dresser, sometimes left the house with a slight smudge of grease on her cheek or a shirt untucked, things that would have driven her insane before the swap. She had also developed a surprising patience for his often rambling explanations about car engines, a patience she had rarely exhibited before. And most tellingly, she had started brewing his strong, black coffee in the mornings, something she had previously found utterly repulsive. He dismissed these as positive changes, a blend of their experiences. But the internal nagging persisted. One evening, as they were watching a movie, Chloe unexpectedly stood up and began pacing, a habit Liam had when he was deep in thought. "Dad," she said, her voice thoughtful, "have you ever considered expanding the garage? Maybe taking on a partner? You're always so swamped." Liam almost dropped his popcorn. It was a thought he'd toyed with for years, a business decision he'd meticulously analyzed and ultimately shelved due to his innate caution. He had never, ever discussed it with Chloe. "Why would you ask that?" he managed, trying to keep his voice even. Chloe shrugged, a movement that was distinctly him. "I don't know. Just a thought. It feels logical." A chill ran down Liam's spine. This was beyond coincidence. He knew, with an icy certainty, that a piece of him, a sliver of his personality, his memories, his very essence, had imprinted itself onto Chloe during the swap. And if that was true, then the inverse must also be true for him. They weren't just changed by the experience, they were inextricably linked, carrying an echo of each other within their very beings. The next day, Liam sought out Mr. Abernathy, the eccentric scientist. He found him in his usual state of disarray, surrounded by complex equations scribbled on whiteboards and the faint smell of burnt toast. Mr. Abernathy, now comfortably back in his own body, peered at Liam over spectacles perched precariously on his nose. "Liam, my boy. Good to see you. Everything back to normal, I trust?" Cat's still a bit jumpy, but little Timmy seems to have shaken off the trauma. Liam leaned against the doorframe, trying to maintain an air of casualness. "Mostly, Mr. Abernathy. But I was wondering, what exactly was the nature of your quantum entanglement field? The reversal, was it complete?" Mr. Abernathy puffed out his chest, a flicker of scientific pride in his eyes. "Oh, absolutely. A complete quantum disentanglement. A perfect reversal of consciousness. As if it never happened. But what if there was a lingering effect?" Liam pressed, choosing his words carefully. "Like a resonance? An echo?" Mr. Abernathy stroked his chin thoughtfully. "An echo, you say? Well, the theoretical possibility of a residual energetic imprint on the neural pathways, particularly if the entanglement was sustained for an extended period, could exist. A sort of neurological ghost in the machine, so to speak. But the probability is infinitesimally small. Negligible, really. Negligible or not, Liam said, his voice firm. I think it's happening. To me, and to Chloe. We're both experiencing remnants. Memories, habits, even personality traits that aren't our own. Mr. Abernathy's eyes widened behind his thick glasses. Fascinating. A real-world demonstration of quantum resonance outside of a controlled environment. My dear boy, this is unprecedented. He began scribbling furiously on a whiteboard. Tell me everything. What specific traits? Any changes in dietary preferences? Sleep cycles? Emotional responses? Liam recounted his observations, the subtle shifts in Chloe, the unsettling echoes within himself. Mr. Abernathy listened with rapt attention, occasionally interjecting with excited exclamations and complex scientific jargon. This is remarkable, Mr. Abernathy finally declared, his eyes gleaming with intellectual fervor. It seems the disentanglement, while complete on a macroscopic level, left a residual quantum entanglement at a subneuronal level. A unique form of identity bleed-through. This could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself. So, is there a way to reverse that? Liam asked, cutting to the chase. He wasn't interested in revolutionizing science. He just wanted his daughter, and himself, to be fully themselves again. Mr. Abernathy paused, his brow furrowed in thought. A secondary disentanglement? More complex. It would require targeting the specific subneuronal resonance frequencies. It's a delicate process, and not without risk. Risk? Liam's heart pounded. What kind of risk? Well, Mr. Abernathy began, adjusting his glasses. If the frequencies are miscalibrated, there's a theoretical possibility of permanent identity fragmentation. Or, even more concerning, a complete erasure of personal identity. Effectively, rendering the individual a blank slate. Or, less dramatically but still undesirable, intensifying the echo, leading to a sort of permanent identity confusion. Liam's blood ran cold. He had come seeking answers, hoping for a simple solution. Instead, he was faced with a horrifying dilemma. He couldn't risk Chloe's well-being, her very sense of self. But he also couldn't ignore the unsettling reality of their shared echoes. He thanked Mr. Abernathy, his mind reeling, and left the lab with a heavy heart. He knew he couldn't tell Chloe about this. The fear, the potential for harm, was too great. He would have to carry this burden alone, to find a way to navigate this unseen connection without endangering her. For the next few weeks, Liam tried to suppress his own echoes, to consciously fight the subtle shifts in his personality. He forced himself to drink his usual black coffee, even if a part of him craved Chloe's cherry tea. He stopped humming pop songs and instead whistled old blues tunes. He focused intently on his work, immersing himself in the predictable world of engines, hoping to ground himself, to reaffirm his own identity. But the echo was persistent, a subtle current beneath the surface of his consciousness. And he began to notice that Chloe's echoes were also becoming more pronounced. She started making surprisingly astute observations about the financial health of the garage, a topic she'd previously dismissed as dad stuff. She even, on one occasion, instinctively reached for a wrench he was about to use, anticipating his need. The most jarring incident occurred when they were at the grocery store. Liam had picked up a bag of his favorite brand of motor oil when Chloe, without looking up from her phone, said, "No, Dad, get the synthetic blend. It's on sale, and it'll last longer." She had never paid attention to such details before. Liam paused, staring at her. "How did you know that?" Chloe finally looked up, a puzzled expression on her face. "Know what?" "About the synthetic blend being on sale," Liam pressed. "And that it'll last longer." Chloe frowned, as if trying to recall a distant memory. I don't know. It just felt right. Like I knew it." She shrugged, then went back to scrolling through her phone, seemingly oblivious to the tremor of fear that ran through Liam. He knew then that this wasn't just a lingering effect. It was an active, albeit subtle, merging of their minds. Their identities, once distinct, were now subtly intertwined, sharing thoughts, instincts, and even memories. The body swap had created an unseen connection, a psychic tether that bound them together, a bond that was both terrifying and, in a strange, unsettling way, deeply intimate. Liam felt a profound sense of helplessness. He couldn't risk the reversal Mr. Abernathy had proposed. But he also couldn't allow this identity bleed-through to continue, especially if it was affecting Chloe in ways she wasn't even aware of. He had to find a different solution, a way to separate their essences without destroying them. He had to protect his daughter, even if it meant battling a ghost of himself within her and a ghost of her within him. The journey of understanding was far from over. It had merely entered a more insidious, more dangerous phase. Liam began a solitary and clandestine experiment. He delved into Mr. Abernathy's discarded textbooks, poring over complex diagrams of neural pathways and quantum mechanics, feeling a desperate urgency that transcended his usual mechanical aptitude. The scientific jargon was dense, but Liam, driven by his paternal instincts, pushed through, searching for any alternative solution, any loophole that didn't involve the terrifying risks of another quantum disentanglement. He began to meticulously document every echo he experienced, every subconscious shift. He created a detailed chart. On one side, Chloe's observed shifts, the grease smudges, the coffee preference, the unexpected business acumen. On the other, his own, the pop songs, the fashion considerations, the intuitive understanding of social dynamics. The correlation was undeniable, a subtle but consistent mirroring. He also started a regimen of mental exercises, attempting to reinforce his own identity. He would spend hours in his garage, surrounded by the familiar scent of oil and metal, repeating his own name, recalling distinct memories from his life before Chloe, before the swap. He'd focus on the precise mechanics of an engine, the tangible reality of his work, hoping to ground himself. He even took up journaling, meticulously recording his thoughts and feelings, trying to solidify the boundaries of his own consciousness. Meanwhile, Chloe's echoes continued, seemingly harmless, sometimes even beneficial. She surprised him one day by effortlessly fixing a small electrical short in the house, a task Liam had been procrastinating for weeks. "Oh, I just knew how," she'd said with a casual shrug that now carried a hint of Liam's practical efficiency. She also began to exhibit an almost paternal protectiveness towards him, subtly steering him away from overworking and encouraging him to relax more. The situation came to a head during a particularly busy week at the auto shop. Liam was swamped with repairs, feeling the familiar stress build. He found himself growing irritable, snapping at Tony and Maria, a rare occurrence. That evening, he slumped onto the couch, utterly exhausted. Chloe walked in, a plate of his favorite pasta in her hands. "Dad, you need to eat. And you really shouldn't be working such long hours. Tony and Maria can handle some of it. You're going to burn out." She spoke with a tone of gentle authority, a concern that felt distinctly his. Liam looked at her, his vision momentarily blurring. For a split second, he saw himself, his own worried expression, on Chloe's face. The lines of their identities seemed to momentarily merge. "Chloe," he said, his voice strained, "we need to talk." He sat her down and, with a heavy heart, explained everything. He told her about Mr. Abernathy's theory, the identity bleed-through, the echoes, and the terrifying risks of another reversal. He showed her his meticulous charts, pointing out the subtle shifts in both of them. Chloe listened in stunned silence, her face growing paler with each revelation. When he finished, she stared at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and dawning comprehension. "You mean, a part of you is in me? And a part of me is in you?" Liam nodded miserably. "That's what it seems like. And I don't know what to do about it. Mr. Abernathy said a full reversal could erase us." Chloe stood up and began pacing, a flurry of restless energy. She ran a hand through her hair, a gesture that was undeniably hers, but the furrow in her brow, the deep-seated worry in her eyes, felt profoundly like Liam's. "So that's why I've been craving black coffee, and why I suddenly understand why you love fixing engines so much. And why I kept thinking about expanding the shop," she exclaimed, the realization hitting her with full force. And you. That's why you've been listening to my terrible pop music and trying to get me to relax more. Exactly, Liam confirmed, feeling a strange mix of relief and renewed fear now that the truth was out. So, what do we do? Chloe asked, her voice tinged with panic. Are we going to be like this forever? A weird, diluted version of ourselves. Liam shook his head. I don't know. But I've been reading. And I have an idea. It's unconventional. And it's just a theory. But it might be safer than Mr. Abernathy's method. He explained his theory, that the echoes were sustained by a subconscious connection, a sort of psychic feedback loop. If they could consciously sever that loop, reinforce their individual identities through a shared, intentional effort, they might be able to naturally dissipate the lingering quantum entanglement. It's about psychological reinforcement, Liam explained. If we consciously reject the borrowed traits, if we actively seek to strengthen our own distinct identities, we might be able to force these echoes to fade. It's like clearing static on a radio. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, considered this. So, I have to consciously stop drinking black coffee and stop thinking about your business finances? And I have to stop humming your pop music and try to be less patient, Liam conceded with a wry smile. We need to identify and actively lean into what makes us us, separate from each other, while also consciously pushing away the echoes. They decided to embark on this self-experiment together. It was a strange, almost absurd undertaking. Chloe consciously forced herself to drink her usual fruity teas, even when a part of her craved Liam's bitter coffee. She made an effort to engage more in her social life, to talk about her friends and her crushes, topics she had neglected during her Liam phase. She even started sketching again, an old hobby she'd put aside, explicitly focusing on drawings that were distinctively hers. Liam, in turn, forced himself to listen to his classic rock and blues albums, shutting out the pop melodies that sometimes invaded his mind. He intentionally sought out conversations about things he enjoyed, like vintage car shows and new repair techniques. He made an effort to be more decisive, more direct, consciously shedding the newfound patience he'd gained from Chloe. He even started wearing his old, battered leather jacket again, a symbol of his pre-swap identity. It was difficult, a constant battle against their own subconscious. There were moments of frustration, moments when they'd slip, only to catch themselves and restart. They held daily check-ins, reporting their progress and their struggles. I almost told Tony to use a specific type of sealant today, Chloe admitted one evening, looking mortified. And then I caught myself. It was so weird, Dad. It just felt like the right thing to say. I found myself color coordinating my tool chest this morning, Liam confessed, shuddering slightly. And I actually considered buying a distressed denim shirt. The horror. Despite the challenges, a new kind of intimacy blossomed between them. This wasn't just father and daughter, they were comrades in a unique psychological battle, bound by a shared secret and a mutual goal. They were learning to define themselves, not in opposition to each other, but in a deeper, more conscious understanding of their own individuality. Weeks passed. Slowly, imperceptibly, the echoes began to fade. The intrusive thoughts grew less frequent, the subconscious urges less insistent. Liam found himself genuinely craving his black coffee again, without having to consciously fight a preference for cherry tea. Chloe, in turn, rediscovered her love for vibrant, expressive clothing, and the grease smudges became a thing of the past. One afternoon, Liam caught himself humming a catchy pop tune. He frowned, instinctively bracing himself to switch to a blues riff. But then he realized something. He wasn't humming Chloe's pop tune. He was humming a new song, one he'd heard on the radio and actually liked. It was his own taste evolving, not an echo of hers. He rushed to find Chloe. "Chloe, I just hummed a pop song," he announced, a mixture of triumph and bewilderment in his voice. Chloe looked up from her sketchbook, a genuine smile spreading across her face. "And I just told Maya that I'm considering taking a gap year to travel before college. It's something I've been thinking about for me, Dad, not something you would want." A profound sense of relief washed over Liam. They were separating. They were reclaiming themselves. The unseen connection, once terrifying, was slowly dissolving, leaving behind not a void, but a stronger, more consciously defined sense of self for both of them. They had navigated the labyrinth of femininity and masculinity, the echoes of each other, and emerged, not unchanged, but fundamentally more themselves. The experiment of self was working. The sense of triumph, though profound, was short-lived. Just as Liam and Chloe began to feel truly recentered in their own identities, a new, far more insidious problem began to emerge. It started subtly, a feeling of unease in Liam. He would be in the middle of a sentence, explaining a complex engine repair to a client, and suddenly lose his train of thought, his mind feeling momentarily blank, as if a word or concept had simply evaporated. He'd attribute it to stress, to the lingering psychological effects of the swap and their self-imposed, echo-cleansing regimen. Then, things escalated. He started misplacing tools more frequently, forgetting appointments, even occasionally forgetting the names of longtime clients. It wasn't just minor forgetfulness, it was a deeper, more systemic lapse in his memory. He'd recall a conversation with Chloe, only to have her correct him on details, or even tell him it never happened. Chloe, too, began experiencing similar issues, though initially less severe. She would struggle to recall specific details from her classes, forgetting key historical dates or mathematical formulas she knew she had learned. Her usually sharp memory, a source of pride, felt hazy, unreliable. "Dad," she said one evening, looking genuinely distressed, "I just spent 20 minutes trying to remember the name of that book I loved last year." "The one with the dragons?" "I can picture the cover, I know the main character, but the title, it's just gone." Liam felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. This wasn't just an echo fading. This was something far more concerning. It was as if parts of their memories, particularly those formed during the swap, or even some from before, were becoming inaccessible. He revisited Mr. Abernathy, his face etched with worry. The scientist listened intently, his excited intellectual fervor replaced by a somber thoughtfulness. "Identity fragmentation," Mr. Abernathy murmured, stroking his chin. "A predicted, albeit low probability, side effect of the sustained subneuronal entanglement." When the echoes began to dissipate, it appears they didn't simply fade. They took pieces with them. "Took pieces?" Liam asked, his voice tight. "What does that mean?" "Imagine your consciousness, your identity, as a tapestry," Mr. Abernathy explained, gesturing vaguely. "When the initial swap occurred, a thread from your tapestry became intertwined with Chloe's, and vice versa. When you consciously tried to separate those threads, to disentangle them psychologically, you inadvertently pulled out some of the original threads from your own tapestry and some from hers. Not just the echo, but the actual memories, the neural connections that formed those memories." "So we're losing our memories?" Liam whispered, the realization hitting him with a sickening lurch. "Not all of them, thankfully," Mr. Abernathy clarified, "but significant portions, particularly those associated with the period of the swap, and perhaps some adjacent memories that were closely linked. The brain's attempt to correct the identity bleed-through, to reestablish a clear boundary, has resulted in collateral damage." "Is there any way to get them back?" Liam asked, a desperate plea in his voice. Mr. Abernathy sighed, pushing his glasses up his nose. "The brain is remarkably adaptable, Liam. Some minor, disconnected memories might naturally reestablish pathways over time. But large, complex sequences? Unlikely without intervention. And any intervention would, again, carry significant risks of further fragmentation or even the blank slate scenario I mentioned before." Liam felt a wave of despair. They had fought so hard to reclaim themselves, only to discover they were paying a terrible price. He thought of all the moments he cherished with Chloe, moments that now felt fragile, potentially erased. He decided not to tell Chloe the full extent of the risk, the potential permanence of the memory loss. He couldn't burden her with that fear. Instead, he told her that some minor memory gaps were a potential side effect and that they would likely improve over time. He urged her to start actively writing down her memories, keeping a detailed journal of her life, a practice she was already doing to some extent. Chloe, though concerned, accepted this explanation, clinging to the hope that the memories would return. She became diligent in her journaling, recording not just daily events, but also trying to recall and write down older memories, desperate to solidify them. Liam, too, redoubled his efforts. He spent hours trying to recall specific moments with Chloe, her first steps, her first day of school, the day he taught her how to ride a bike. He found that some memories were still vivid, while others were frustratingly hazy, like trying to grasp smoke. He realized, with a pang of fear, that the more he tried to force a memory, the more elusive it became. The emotional toll began to mount. Liam found himself growing increasingly withdrawn, consumed by the fear of losing more of himself, more of his shared history with Chloe. He became hypervigilant, constantly testing his memory, which only served to highlight its growing unreliability. One afternoon, Chloe came home, her face beaming. "Dad, guess what? Maya and I just got tickets to the Festival of Stars. Remember? We used to go every year when I was little." Liam frowned. The Festival of Stars? He searched his memory, but found only a blank space. He could remember taking Chloe to various events, but a Festival of Stars specifically? Nothing. Chloe's smile faltered. "You don't remember? It's the one where they have all the giant glowing lanterns and the fireworks shaped like animals? You always said it was my favorite." Liam's heart sank. He tried to fake it, to pretend he remembered, but the look in Chloe's eyes, the flicker of hurt and confusion, made him unable to lie. I'm sorry, honey. I really don't." Chloe's face fell, a shadow passing over her bright features. "But we went every year. You always carried me on your shoulders so I could see the fireworks. You even bought me that little light-up star wand." The detail of the star wand sparked a vague, almost ghostly image in Liam's mind, a fleeting sense of warmth and wonder. But the memory itself, the context, the feeling of carrying his daughter on his shoulders, it was gone. "I'm so sorry," Liam said, his voice thick with genuine sorrow. "I don't know why I can't remember." Chloe nodded slowly, a profound sadness settling over her. "It's okay, Dad," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. I guess we'll just make new memories, right?" Her forced optimism broke Liam's heart. He realized then the true, devastating cost of their experience. It wasn't just a physical swap, it was a deep, existential restructuring. The threads of their lives, once interwoven, were now fraying, leaving gaps and holes in the tapestry of their shared past. That night, Liam couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the memories he couldn't access, the precious moments with Chloe that were now lost to him. He knew he had to protect what remained, to cherish every new memory they made. But a terrifying question gnawed at him. What if the unraveling continued? What if, eventually, there was nothing left but a fragmented, ghostly echo of who they once were? He wondered about Mr. Abernathy's permanent identity fragmentation, or complete erasure. Was this the slow, insidious onset of that? Or was it a different, equally devastating consequence, one that left them with their personalities, but stripped them of their history, their foundation? The unseen connection had been severed, but its severance had left them with wounds deeper than any physical injury. They had reclaimed their bodies, but at the cost of their memories, the very essence of their shared past. The journey had twisted into a terrifying plot twist, one that left them both grappling with the fragile nature of their own identities. The silence in the house felt heavy, laden with the weight of forgotten moments and the chilling realization that their ordeal was far from over. The memory gaps became more frequent, more profound. It wasn't just old events. Sometimes, more recent conversations would simply vanish from their minds. Liam found himself relying heavily on notes, scribbling down tasks, names, and even personal details to compensate. Chloe's academic performance began to suffer as she struggled to retain information. Her vibrant energy dimmed, replaced by a quiet frustration and an underlying current of fear. I can't remember what we talked about for English homework last night, Dad," Chloe confessed, her voice strained, a tear tracking down her cheek. I wrote it down, but I can't even remember writing it. It's like, it's like a chunk of my brain is just missing. Liam held her, his own heart aching with a helplessness he hadn't felt since her mother's passing. It's okay, honey. We'll figure it out. We always do. But even as he spoke the words, a terrifying doubt gnawed at him. Could they? The effect was not uniform. Some memories remained crystal clear, almost painfully vivid, while others vanished without a trace. It was a cruel, arbitrary process, leaving them with fragmented histories, like torn photographs. Liam's coworkers began to notice his absent-mindedness. Tony would find him staring blankly at an engine, a wrench dangling from his hand, lost in a silent struggle to recall a procedure. Maria would gently remind him of appointments or details he'd forgotten. They attributed it to stress, to the mysterious neighborhood incident that no one outside their immediate vicinity fully understood. The most unnerving aspect was how their personalities, while distinct again, had become strangely hollowed out in places. Liam sometimes felt a lack of his usual passion for his work, a dampened enthusiasm. Chloe, too, found moments where her usual fierce determination wavered, replaced by a pervasive apathy. It was as if the emotional resonance tied to those forgotten memories had also diminished, leaving behind a subtle emotional flatness. One evening, Chloe brought him a small, worn photo album. "Look, Dad," she said, her voice soft. "This is us at the Festival of Stars. I found it in my old keepsake box." Liam looked at the faded photograph. A younger version of himself, smiling broadly, holding a tiny, beaming Chloe on his shoulders. The background was a blur of colorful, glowing lanterns and streaks of fireworks. He could see the joy on their faces, feel the warmth radiating from the image. But the memory itself, the sensory experience of that night, remained stubbornly absent. He knew it happened, he saw the proof, but he couldn't feel it. It was like reading a story about someone else's life. "It's beautiful, honey," he said, his voice thick with emotion. He forced a smile, but inside, a profound sadness settled. The proof of a cherished memory was there, but the memory itself was a void. The weight of the secret, this unspoken trauma, began to strain their relationship. While they were still close, an invisible wall had erected itself between them, built from unspoken fears and the ghosts of forgotten moments. Liam found himself withdrawing further, reluctant to engage in conversations that might expose another memory gap. Chloe, in turn, became more self-reliant, less likely to ask for his input, perhaps sensing his own struggles. Desperate, Liam made another clandestine visit to Mr. Abernathy. The scientist looked grimmer than usual. "The memory fragmentation is accelerating, isn't it?" he stated, rather than asked. Liam nodded. "It's getting worse. For both of us. There are entire chunks of my life with Chloe that are just gone. And she's struggling in school. It's destroying her." Mr. Abernathy paced his lab, a nervous energy radiating from him. "I've been reviewing my original quantum entanglement algorithms. There's a theoretical component I overlooked, a feedback loop that could explain this. The initial body swap didn't just exchange consciousnesses, it created a localized, self-sustaining quantum entanglement field within the brains, albeit at a subneuronal level. When you both consciously fought the echoes, you essentially created a counterfield that, instead of simply disentangling, aggressively fragmented those intertwined neural connections." "So our efforts to fix ourselves made it worse?" Liam asked, a bitter taste in his mouth. "In a way," Mr. Abernathy conceded. "A well-intentioned but ultimately ill-informed approach. The brain, attempting to re-establish its singular identity, began to sever connections it perceived as foreign, even if those connections were deeply integrated with its own memories." "Is there anything we can do?" Liam pleaded, his voice cracking with despair. "Before we lose everything?" Mr. Abernathy stopped pacing, his eyes fixed on a complex diagram on his whiteboard. "There is one final, theoretical possibility. It's incredibly risky, even more so than the previous options. And it involves a partial re-entanglement." Liam stared at him, bewildered. "Re-entanglement? You want to swap us back?" No, not a full swap," Mr. Abernathy clarified quickly. That would likely result in catastrophic fragmentation. This is different. My theory is that if we can identify the exact resonant frequency of the lingering fragmented connections, we could generate a precise, low-level quantum field. It wouldn't cause a full swap, but rather a momentary, highly controlled reentanglement. A sort of snap that could reintegrate the fragmented memory threads. Like weaving back the torn threads of a tapestry. What's the risk? Liam asked, his heart hammering in his chest. The risk, Mr. Abernathy said, his voice unusually grave, is that if the frequency isn't exact, or if the field is even slightly off, it could cause the remaining memories to further fragment or even trigger a full, irreversible personality merge. Or, he added, almost as an afterthought, it could cause a complete brain wipe, leaving you both in a vegetative state. Liam staggered back, clutching the doorframe for support. A complete brain wipe? Mr. Abernathy nodded slowly. It's the most dangerous procedure imaginable. But, he added, his voice gaining a desperate edge, it's also the only theoretical way to retrieve those lost memories. To make you whole again. Without it, the fragmentation will likely continue, slowly but inevitably. Liam returned home, the chilling words echoing in his mind. He looked at Chloe, who was diligently writing in her journal, her brow furrowed in concentration, trying to grasp at fleeting memories. He couldn't risk her. He absolutely could not. The thought of her becoming a blank slate, or having her personality irrevocably merged with his, was a nightmare beyond imagining. But what was the alternative? To watch her slowly lose herself, piece by piece? To live a life devoid of their shared history, their laughter, their tears, their triumphs? To become strangers to their own past? He spent days agonizing over the decision. He observed Chloe, saw the increasing sadness in her eyes, the moments of quiet despair when a memory eluded her. He knew, with a gut-wrenching certainty, that he had to try. He had to give her a chance to be whole again, even if it meant risking everything. One evening, he sat Chloe down again, the photo album of the Festival of Stars open on the table between them. He looked at the beaming faces, the vibrant colors, and felt a surge of desperate resolve. Chloe, he began, his voice firm despite the tremor in his hands, Mr. Abernathy thinks he has a way to get our memories back. But it's very dangerous. It could make things much, much worse. He laid out the risks, sparing her none of the terrifying details, the possibilities of total memory loss, personality merge, or a vegetative state. He wanted her to understand the gravity of the choice. Chloe listened, her face pale, her eyes fixed on his. When he finished, a long silence stretched between them, punctuated only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. She looked at the photograph, then back at him, her gaze surprisingly steady. But it also might make us whole again, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Liam nodded. It's the only chance. Chloe closed the photo album, her fingers tracing the faded image of their younger selves. I hate this feeling, Dad, she said, her voice filled with a quiet anguish. This feeling of not knowing who I am, of having holes in my own story. I don't want to forget you. I don't want to forget us. She met his gaze, a fierce determination replacing the fear in her eyes. Let's do it, Dad. Let's try. I'd rather risk everything trying to get us back than slowly disappear without trying at all. Liam looked at his daughter, his heart swelling with a mixture of terror and immense pride. Her courage, her unwavering spirit, even in the face of such a terrifying choice, was a testament to the strength he knew she possessed, even if some of the memories of how she'd forged that strength were gone. They had faced the unexpected swap, the confusing echoes, and now they faced the ultimate gamble. The fragmented tapestry of their lives hung precariously, and they were about to attempt a dangerous, all-or-nothing reweaving. The air in Mr. Abernathy's lab crackled with an almost tangible tension. Liam and Chloe sat side by side in two cushioned chairs, their hands clasped tightly together. The lab, usually a chaotic mess of wires and half-finished projects, had been meticulously organized, every component of the modified quantum resonator carefully calibrated. The room was bathed in the soft, pulsating glow of various monitors, their readouts displaying complex neurological patterns and energy frequencies. Mr. Abernathy, his face unusually grim beneath his perpetually disheveled hair, made a final adjustment to a series of intricate sensors attached to their heads. Thin wires snaked from the sensors to the central resonator, a gleaming, multifaceted crystal humming with a low, almost inaudible thrum. "Are you both absolutely certain about this?" Mr. Abernathy asked, his voice low and serious. "The risks, as I've explained, are considerable. There's no guarantee of success, and the potential for irreversible outcomes is very real." Liam squeezed Chloe's hand, feeling her tremble slightly. He met her gaze and saw not fear, but a quiet, resolute determination. "We're sure, Mr. Abernathy," Liam said, his voice steady. "We can't live like this, losing ourselves piece by piece." Chloe nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. "We trust you." Mr. Abernathy took a deep breath, adjusted his glasses, and moved to the control panel. His fingers hovered over a series of illuminated buttons. "All right then. We will initiate a low-frequency, highly targeted quantum resonance pulse. The goal is to stimulate the fragmented neural pathways to encourage them to reintegrate. You may experience a range of sensations: disorientation, vivid flashes of memory, even a brief, controlled re-echo of your swapped personalities. Just try to focus on your own individual identities, but allow the memories to flow." He pressed the first button. A soft, high-pitched whine emanated from the resonator, gradually building in intensity. The air around them began to shimmer, an almost visible distortion in the light. Liam felt a strange pressure building behind his eyes, a feeling of his mind being stretched thin. Then the first flash. A rapid succession of images, like a broken projector reel. Chloe's locker, filled with brightly colored stickers. His own hands, calloused, expertly fixing an engine. Chloe laughing with Maya. Himself struggling with a bra. It was a dizzying, disorienting kaleidoscope of their swapped lives. "It's working," Mr. Abernathy exclaimed, his voice filled with a renewed scientific excitement, though his eyes remained fixed on the monitors. "Neural activity is spiking. The resonant frequencies are integrating." Liam felt a familiar wave of confusion wash over him. For a moment, he wasn't sure if he was Liam, the mechanic, or Chloe, the teenager. He felt a fleeting craving for cherry tea, a surge of teenage anxiety about a pop quiz, a subconscious urge to check his phone for new messages. He gripped Chloe's hand tighter, grounding himself in the physical contact. Chloe gasped beside him. "Dad, I remember. The Festival of Stars. You carried me on your shoulders, and I dropped my light-up star wand in the fountain, and you fished it out for me." Her eyes were wide with wonder and a joyous recognition. A warmth spread through Liam's chest. He could see it now, the memory, vivid and clear. He could feel the weight of her small body on his shoulders, the cool water as he reached into the fountain, the pure relief on her face when he retrieved the wand. "I remember, honey," he choked out, tears stinging his eyes. "I remember everything." As the resonance continued, more memories flooded back, not just from the swap, but from years prior. Gaps in their personal histories began to fill, fragmented pieces slotting back into place, reweaving the torn tapestry of their lives. It was like a dam breaking, a deluge of forgotten moments, emotions, and experiences rushing back into their minds. But with the memories came the residual echoes. Liam found himself struggling again with a fleeting desire to reorganize his tool chest by color, a strange concern about the latest fashion trends. Chloe, in turn, felt a temporary surge of his practical, no-nonsense approach to problem-solving, a brief urge to offer unsolicited financial advice. "Resist the bleed-through," Mr. Abernathy shouted, his voice strained. "Focus on your core identities. The reintegration is complete. Now you must consciously shed the remnants of the entanglement." Liam and Chloe closed their eyes, their hands still clasped, and focused with every fiber of their being. Liam pictured his garage, the scent of oil, the feel of a wrench in his hand, the sound of his own laugh. Chloe visualized her art, her friends, her dreams for college, the feeling of her own light steps. They pushed back against the invading thoughts, actively reaffirming their distinct selves, consciously disentangling the final, stubborn threads of the quantum entanglement. The machine hummed, then slowly, gracefully, powered down. The light faded, the shimmering air stilled. The silence that followed was profound, absolute. Liam opened his eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. He felt whole. Not just mentally, but emotionally. The emotional flatness was gone, replaced by the full spectrum of his own feelings, connected to his own, fully restored memories. He looked at Chloe and saw her, truly saw her eyes bright and clear, devoid of the fear and sadness that had plagued her. "Chloe," he asked, his voice tentative. "Dad," she replied, a genuine, radiant smile blooming on her face. "I'm me. Completely me." She squeezed his hand, then let go. "And you're you. The real you." They rose from the chairs, a new lightness in their steps. They had faced the quantum gamble, and they had won. Their memories were back, their identities restored. Mr. Abernathy, looking utterly exhausted but triumphant, approached them. "Remarkable. Simply remarkable. The most successful, if dangerously experimental, procedure of my career." He beamed, his scientific ego fully restored. "There may be some lingering, very minor subconscious associations for a while, but the active fragmentation should cease. You are effectively rewritten." As they left the lab, the evening sun cast long shadows, just as it had the day their lives were first upended. But this time, the shadows felt comforting, familiar. Weeks turned into months. The memory gaps were gone, replaced by a vivid, rich tapestry of their shared past. They found themselves recounting stories with joyous abandon, delighting in forgotten details, reliving cherished moments. The subtle echoes that Mr. Abernathy predicted did occasionally surface. Liam might find himself humming a new pop song that was genuinely his taste, or Chloe might offer a surprisingly astute observation about the financial market. But these were no longer intrusive or confusing. They were simply minor, organic developments in their personalities, a natural evolution influenced by their extraordinary experience, not a bleed-through of another's identity. Their relationship, forged in the crucible of chaos and fear, was stronger than ever. They had walked in each other's shoes, literally, and had returned with an unbreakable bond of understanding and empathy. Liam no longer just saw Chloe as his daughter. He saw her as a formidable, complex, and beautiful young woman, a testament to her own strength. And Chloe, in turn, saw Liam not just as her father, but as a courageous, loving man who had risked everything for her. One evening, as they were sitting on the porch, watching the stars, Chloe leaned her head on his shoulder. "You know, Dad," she said softly, "that whole body swap thing, it was terrifying. And the memory loss was horrible." Liam nodded, wrapping an arm around her. "It was the most terrifying experience of my life. But," she continued, looking up at the vast expanse of the night sky, I think it also made us better. It made us see each other, truly see each other, in a way we never would have before. It made us appreciate who we are, individually, and who we are together." Liam smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "I think you're right, honey. We almost lost ourselves, but in doing so, we found a deeper, truer version of who we're meant to be." The stars twinkled above them, silent witnesses to their unique journey. The cosmic spark that had briefly merged their souls had, in the end, not destroyed them, but ignited within them a profound new understanding of self, connection, and the precious, fragile nature of memory. They had faced the quantum gamble, and in their victory, they had not just regained their past, but secured a richer, more profound future together.